Marty Liquori, Villanova. As only the third U.S. high school runner of his time to break the magic 4-minute mile barrier, Marty Liquori arrived on the Villanova campus to much acclaim. His exploits in a Wildcat uniform were just as magical. As a freshman in 1968, Liquori became the youngest person at the time to participate in the 1,500-meter final at the Olympics. By the time he was a senior, Liquori had won 4 of his 5 NCAA titles in the mile and was a member of 2 Villanova national championship teams. Add numerous sub-4-minute miles and that dramatic victory in that hotly contested Dream Mile race that featured fellow Hall of Famer Jim Ryun, who Liquori had beaten for the NCAA title the year before. Well, let's give a V for Villanova's Marty Liquori as he enters the Hall of Fame. Marty Liquori, Villanova. I thought your parents wanted you to go to an Ivy League school.
I did have a lot of pressure about going to an Ivy League school because in the beginning, track was just about getting a free college scholarship. And so I was being pressured to accept a scholarship to Harvard or Penn. And after I ran a 4:04 mile in the Penn relays, my mother said, well, maybe you could go wherever you want. And my high school coach also said, good friend of Bill's, Fred Dwyer, said, you know, there's a lot of people that could be lawyers, but you have a talent and, you know, you should follow that up. Now, that being said, I would never give that advice to anybody. Take the sure thing, man. To get onto this stage, every one of us, it was like 1,000,000 to 1.
Well, you go to Villanova. Villanova happy that you were there because in '68 you're the youngest to ever compete in the Olympic 1,500 meters, and in '69 the whole thing with Jim Ryun starts. He beat you in the indoor, right? And then you took him in the outdoor. So let's start '69 before we get to '71.
Well, like everybody of that generation, Jim Ryun was up on a pedestal. So at a turning point in my career and in the whole trajectory of our rivalry was my sophomore year. You had a great picture of it when we came down the stretch together. And I was sick couldn't get off the toilet before that race. Jumbo Elliott forced me to get out there. But, you know, that was a turning point, and a great rivalry was started at that point.
The rivalry becomes the Dream Mile in '71. This almost became like an Ollie Frazier hype thing, and it was bigger than the NBA back then. The NBA, you know, what was that like to be in that media spotlight for that week leading up to that, or weeks leading up to that run?
Yeah, I don't think too many people in track and field went through that type of thing. I always was admiring Carl Lewis because he seemed to have like 3 years of what I had for one weekend. And I also think when I'm watching NBA or any of these guys that are under that kind of pressure for 10 years at a time. I don't know how they did it. It was the most miserable week of my life. But the one thing I do remember, because we have so many coaches here, Jumbo Elliott was not a guy who put any kind of pressure on me. He only told me twice. Once before the Olympic trials, he said, this is important. Don't get in trouble. And the other time was the Ryun thing, the only time he really discussed strategy. And he said, you know, you better not wait too late. You need to go soon with this guy. And that was the 2 big pep talks. I paid 4 years.
When you think back on '71 and '69 and that whole period of time, what thoughts do you have?
Well, it was a great thing that we had 2 milers that were among the best of the world. I mean, I have to always say that if Jim Ryun did not exist, I don't know if I would have existed, because he laid down the path. I broke the 4-minute mile in high school. Yeah, after Jim Ryun showed us the way. He was the world record holder. Unlike Louise, I ran in the '68 Olympics. That was the first Olympics I ever saw. That was the first international track meet I ever saw. So I'm just this kid that thinks, oh, Americans are good at the mile. I'm an American. And, you know, Jim Ryun's great. So if that hadn't have happened, if I had to be like the first great long jumper in 20 years, I think it would have been a whole different thing for me. I have to credit him for, you know, a lot of my career.
And then that career turned into a broadcast career. I mean, so many Olympiads. And is there a moment that stands out to you as Marty Liquori, the analyst, that you're like, yeah, that was the moment that sticks with me forever? Obviously, Munich is in a whole nother category.
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate to be able to spend those 30 years after my career was over watching these athletes run. I think the one moment I remember was the very first race I did, or the second race I did, and it was the Olympic final in the 1,500 meters, and you would understand this. So the race was over, Kipkeino and Vasala of Finland, and it was exactly the kind of race that I would have liked to have been in. And the producer said, okay, we're away in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I go, oh, shit. That was my race. And the producer said, Marty, just because I said 1, that doesn't mean we were off the air.
I had a moment like that at ESPN.
But I didn't get fired after that.
Yeah. All right, listen, you've thrown yourself into jazz music the way you threw yourself into running the mile. How is jazz music and running similar?
Well, I think all music, it's similar in that to be a great musician, like an athlete, you have to practice a lot by yourself, and you have to practice the things that you need to practice, not the things you want to practice. And it's kind of like running, because you practice by yourself for a long time, and then you get on the stage with a band, or you run in the Penn relays, and everybody runs their best time. Or in music, the bass player's not bugging the hell out of you, the drummer's okay, and the piano player's laying it down. And in both of those situations, you get into a flow, which you can't really experience in any other thing of life. So in that way, they're very similar ways to get in that flow and actually leave this planet for a little while without drugs.
He hit all the right notes. Marty Liquori.